I think a lot of times travel is all about just containing the situation. Like there's going to be chaos. Do what you can to kind of compress it and restrict it to one particular area. Like find another room, find a spot off to the side. Because kids are going to be kids. You can't get them to stop being kids, but you can sort of remove them from the equation. You're tuned in to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we are going to be talking about traveling with your kids, taking them to formal events, weddings, funerals, that kind of thing, how to keep them occupied, how to keep them, in a good mood, and how to prevent them from causing a scene. But before we get into all of that, Brandon, if our listeners have questions for us, stories, if they want to be on the show, if they want to just connect with us in some way, where can they find us?
You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. Please give us a like and a follow there. If you want to connect with us directly, you can send us an email at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com, and you can check out this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
That's right, and you can also watch us live on Facebook when we record these. You can catch them a few days before you get them in your podcast feed. We are live on Facebook right now. So find us on Facebook, Dadsplaining a Fatherhood Podcast. And while you're at it, we've got a Facebook group, Dadsplaining a Fatherhood Group, for dads to connect, share tips, ask questions. It's for moms too. So give that a search. And while you're at it, do us a favor. If you like what you're listening to, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you do. And we can use that to reach more dads. So, Brandon, we're just going to dive right into today's subject because it's all about what you have been up to for the last week. How did everything go?
Everything went about as smooth as it could go. I'm happy to report. I'm not saying it was easy.
Right.
Because it's just never going to be easy. But, I mean, things went pretty well. Like, the thing that you worry the most about with traveling is the actual traveling part.
Yeah.
And we took flights to and from Michigan, and the flights were fine. I don't know how, but they just were. Like, I think it helped that he slept. So, I mean, not to jump right into the good stuff, but I think one of my tips is if you're taking a flight or driving, just however you're traveling around, try to line it up around bedtime or nap time.
Yes.
So this is like the key fact right off the top because the first flight was in the evening, and so it was scheduled for around 7. Didn't actually leave until about 9. Got delayed a couple times.
Oh.
So he was good and ready to sleep by the time we were getting on the plane. He was cranky, though, because it was past his bedtime, and he could not fall asleep in the airport.
Oh.
I don't blame him. It's bright.
Yeah.
It's super bright in there. It's noisy.
People
we're in
do
Atlanta.
it somehow.
We're in Atlanta, so we're at Hartsfield-Jackson, which is the busiest airport in the world.
Yes.
So there's tons of people, even on a Thursday evening at 8 o'clock going to Michigan. Like, there's a lot of people, apparently, trying to do that. And so busy, but he slept after crying for about 15 minutes until the plane took off. As soon as it took off, he was out, and then he slept. And then the flight's pretty simple. It's like an hour and a half, so it's perfect for him to be comfortable. And then on the way coming home, the flight was at 11 o'clock, and his nap time is around 11:30. Same thing. Fell asleep, and he was good to go. He did wake up, a little bit before the plane lands, and then there's the whole, you land, and then you're taxiing to the terminal, and there's just a lot of time to kill, and then you're waiting for people to get off the plane. So, I mean, he was awake and just kind of active for a while, like a half hour or so, and just kind of hanging around. But yeah, all things considered, it went reasonably well.
That's awesome. I can verify that tip. Last summer, we covered this in a podcast episode last summer, actually.
Yeah.
We took a drive from Georgia to Florida for a vacation with David. At the time, he was, I want to say, 7 months old.
Yep.
And our trip down, we chose early morning, so he would still be asleep. And he slept, really until the last half hour of the trip.
Nice.
The drive back, we had to drive in the middle of the day. So, of course, he did not sleep. He didn't even take his nap. And then for the last 3 hours of the trip, he was crying and screaming the whole way.
Right.
So definitely, if you can swing it, plan for those crucial sleep hours if you're going to travel with a kid.
Yeah, if you can do it, it's so worth it. I was so stressed about the flight, and I'm still angsty about doing it again if we had to do a longer flight.
Yeah.
Or a flight where it couldn't line up with nap time, bedtime. Just 'cause
So how
I don't
long was
know.
this flight again?
Like an hour and a half. So that's the beauty of it. If you're not going anywhere too long, you're just already in a good spot because it's just not going to last for forever. But we didn't really have to try out a lot of on-the-plane activities and things. We tried to bring stuff. I will give a tip as well. if you're like us, we have a kid who's under 2. So that means he can be free to ride as a lap infant.
Yes.
So this is a big kind of a sticking point because I know you guys had a longer flight and you had a seat for David because it was going to be a long time.
Yeah.
Lap infant is tough because you can't put them down. You can't restrain them in anything. You can't let them get comfortable, basically. So
And
you're
there's
just
nowhere for him to go.
There's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah.
And it's not as if being strapped into a car seat is great for freedom, but at least it's comfortable. They're used to it. So we didn't have that. And I was pretty worried about that as well. Like I said, we kind of lucked out because he did nap. But then you're stuck holding a child. If you have on a younger side, like less than a year, a couple months, then they don't maybe weigh as much and it's maybe not terrible. But I mean, this guy's, plus 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So you're holding like a dead weight.
Yeah.
The entire time that he's asleep. So another pro tip, bring some kind of a pillow or a prop because there's not really, like there's the armrests, but that's not very comfortable. It's not really the right height and kind of angle for the sleeping child. So if you're imagining like cradling the baby, and normally you might want to have like a pillow or a boppy at home. That might be a little too cumbersome for the plane. We used a ball. Actually,
What kind of ball?
A small, not really a small, kind of like a medium-sized kind of foam-based ball. It's kind of squishy, but it's like slightly big enough that it could basically be propped under one arm.
Oh.
And kind of prop that up, so it kind of acts as part of like what a boppy would give to you.
Okay.
And I say you could do a boppy, but that's kind of big to bring on the plane. You could do a pillow, but again, also kind of big. So if you're just trying to think of small things, some kind of a small pillow that you could maybe fold over, or a ball actually worked pretty well for us.
That is very interesting. Very sort of DIY.
Yeah, I mean, my wife with the amazing idea, like he likes playing with balls a little bit now. He kind of understands the basic concepts of throwing. He never throws in the same direction twice, which is amusing, but it kind of worked out pretty well. So I would just recommend some kind of a thing to help prop up an arm if you're going to have a sleeping child.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of screwed because it's heavy and you can't move. And if you move, they wake up and you don't want to move. And so you're just kind of stuck there. But it allows you to take some of the pressure off, and then you can watch the movie and kind of go about your day. And that's especially important because on one of our flights, we didn't have like the TVs or the screens or anything to watch anything. So we were just like stuck just holding him and like playing solitaire or something of that nature. So definitely bring that. A swaddle is the other thing I was trying to think of. If you take a swaddle and you roll it up kind of like burrito style, that can kind of give it some heft and some support to it, so you could kind of shove that in to the crook of your arm, and it can kind of be like a de facto headrest, if you will, for the kid.
Oh man, you just gave me like a trip down memory lane because we're I mean, we're a few months past the swaddle with David being at 20 months, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot about the swaddle.
I haven't touched a swaddle in months, and then I saw them, and like the way I'd been storing them is rolling them up, so they take up less room, and I was like, oh my gosh, there you go. And so like one of the last things I grabbed was that swaddle, and it comes in handy. And then it also doubles, of course, as a blanket. Right. So when they're on the plane and they're asleep, you can kind of cover them. I don't know about, well, I guess I do know, like David, like at night when he's asleep, you put a blanket over him,
Usually,
right?
yeah.
Right, yeah, same with Noah. So, I mean, there you go. It kind of fulfills that same thing of them being a blanket. But, when you're traveling, you got to have dual purpose. Yeah. And then it obviously rolls up and boom, easy storage.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so the plane ride, not too bad. And then in terms of being there, it was a little tough just because we're not at home, so we don't have a lot of toys. Right. We tried to bring a lot with us. We had basically an entire bag just full of toys and things.
Well, and how many days was the trip?
2 days.
2 days, okay. So enough supplies to cover that time.
Yeah, we were there for 2 days and then like a travel day. So like, 3 days all told, but 2 days of being there. And we were there for a wedding, so we really didn't do anything other than staying at our house that we were renting, and then going to the wedding and going back and forth, and that was pretty much it. And the only thing we had to do for the wedding was rehearsal dinner and actual wedding. So a lot of just kind of downtime at a home that's not our home, and nowhere really to go, and just kind of hanging out. So we just did the best we could. One exciting thing. that happened along the way. This has nothing to do with tips or anything, but Noah has not been walking much, and he just hasn't really been interested. He's a big crawler, and just for whatever reason, he just decided he really liked Michigan, and that boy stood up.
Oh, okay.
He stood up for the first time on his own.
Pulled himself up, okay.
Not even pulled himself up,
Right.
just like pulling up, no problem, but like standing up from sitting.
Oh, no way.
He's just in the middle of the living room.
Yeah.
Unfamiliar environment. I don't know if that just jazzed him up.
Probably.
But all of a sudden, he just lifts himself up. He just starts sitting up, and he stands, and he does the cute little wobbly leg kind of a thing, like, I don't know if I got this. I don't know if I got this. And then he did it. And he just over and over again, it's like out of nowhere. I mean, I have a pretty lazy kid. He does not want to do much. And out of nowhere, he was just like, today's the day, guys. We're in Michigan.
Cool.
We're doing this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I've got a lot of theories about why.
Yeah.
The place we were at has a lot of carpet. Our house has a lot of hardwood.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt safer.
Maybe.
Different environment.
Yeah.
Different climate. Different state.
Right.
I don't know what he knows about Michigan, but he's just like, boom, we're doing this. So there was some excitement on the trip. Outside of the wedding, and he did reasonably well with the pack and play and kind of going down and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, just stick to your routine as much as you can. Like, we stuck to the naps, we stuck to the bedtime, we stuck to eating and snacks and things of that nature. And I would say the last big sticking point was the snacks and the food in general. Because you're not at your house, you don't have your kind of staples. So really, the best decision I made for the entire trip was that before we left, I made some sandwiches. Now, when we were there, we obviously had access to, we went to the grocery store. We could have peanut butter and bread and stuff. But I kept forgetting to make him food when we were there. And so we lived off these sandwiches that I made before we even left.
Nice.
And he was eating them throughout several days of the trip. And like, whenever he would get a little fussy, I just broke out the bag of sandwiches, just ripping off some pieces and giving him some peanut butter sandwiches. And that was the best decision that I could have made, because it's not a liquid. So you don't have to worry about TSA. So I would just say, obviously pack some crackers, graham crackers. We had that kind of thing. But the sandwiches, because those will get you a lot more mileage.
That is awesome.
And I just packed a couple of them, and like it lasted us all the way until the wedding. And then eventually we did run out, because he was that's the only thing I could give him. Because when you're on the go, and if you have to be at a wedding or some other type of event, like you don't have access to food. Really, other than like when other people decide to feed you. And so you're at someone else's mercy. And with a child, you'd never want that to happen. So trying to plan to have your own food so that you can kind of maintain some of that authority to dictate when you can give your kid food is essential, because they will not stand for it. That's the easiest thing to do. So just having some food on hand, and as much as you can really cram in there, just to have yourself as much flexibility as possible.
Exactly. And it's almost counterintuitive, because when you're at home, like, as parents, sometimes we worry a lot about variety with our kids, making sure they're not eating the same thing for lunch every day, the same thing for dinner, whatever. But you don't really have that luxury when you're traveling. Like when we were on our cruise, we found on the ship maybe 2 meals that David reliably would eat. Like he would eat a certain plate at dinner, and he would eat a certain fruits for breakfast, and that's all he would eat. So we had to just throw out the idea of, well, let's give him something a little different, let's mix it up, and you just go with what they'll eat. Just for that short period of time, you got to break that routine. And for the sandwiches, that is a really good idea, especially for something like a peanut butter sandwich, where it's not like meat or cheese where you're worried about it going bad after a couple of days, and you're only there 2 days anyway. Oh man, okay, I'm gonna write that down.
I'm telling you, there's not a whole lot that you can really take away from it. I mean, do the same things you normally do. You're just in a different place, and just try to stick to your routine and schedule as much as possible, because the child has no idea really that you're doing something different, and so they crave the routine, so try to stick to it as best you can. And that served us pretty well. Like, even though he was in a different environment, and in a pack and play, and like not his crib, and like everything's different rooms, like he did pretty good with the big things like sleeping.
Did he sleep in the same room as you guys in that pack and play?
Yes, he did. But because he's at that point where he kind of is sleeping through the night, like he really wasn't a problem for us.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Other than the fact that he's still going to wake up early. So
exactly.
When you're on a trip, it's not a vacation anymore.
Nope.
When you have a kid, so you're going to still be up at 6 a.m. or 6:30 or whatever it is, and it's just going to kind of roll that way. I know we're going to transition into talking about the formal occasions. One kind of a weird uniqueness to our trip is that we were at a wedding
Yeah.
and we were at somebody else's house for the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little unusual, like a destination wedding, but B, we weren't at a venue.
Yeah.
We were at someone's house. So we knew the people. We'd never been to this house, and we had kind of like we're like a second tier family,
Right.
and friends, basically, of the people getting married. And so we just kind of coordinated with them, and we're like, hey, can we bring the pack and play to your place and put him down, and then we don't have to leave.
Yeah.
That actually worked out very well. So if you happen to have that situation, if you're going somewhere, and let's say you whatever your trip is, even if it's not a wedding, but if you're going to be at somebody else's house, if you can just be at someone's location where you're going to want to stay, and you don't want to have to leave and go back to your hotel or your Airbnb, bring the pack and play is what we did, and we just kind of arrange like which room we're going to put him into when it's bedtime.
Right.
And then bring your monitor.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then you just follow the same routine.
Yeah.
So that actually worked out surprisingly well. We were at somebody else's house. We were leaving him. We put him to bed, and it worked. Like, he went down to sleep. He slept. He was tired because it was his usual time.
Yeah.
We had the monitor. I just held it and had it in my pocket the whole time. And we were still, on the premises, on the property, just like we would be at home. And, with a wedding, that's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to, have the dinner and the meal and the dancing and the hanging out.
Right.
And we didn't have to worry about it. Like, it just worked out very well. So like I said,
nice.
very unique
Yeah.
kind of a situation and a setup to be able to accomplish that. When you're traveling, that's kind of awkward because you have to put your kid to bed and then you can't go out.
Yeah.
Usually. But it kind of worked out well for us. So if you have that option, just kind of thinking ahead about having a pack and play and kind of bringing the portable bed with you and just being able to set them up.
Exactly. That way you don't have to be like, okay, well, it's 7 o'clock. It was great. Thanks for having us. We're going to go back to the hotel and
Yeah, exactly. Like, we would have, if we had done that, we would have seen the ceremony but not done the dinner.
Exactly.
Or we wouldn't have even really been able to do the rehearsal dinner because it took place at like 6:30.
Yeah.
And so it kind of doesn't really work. Now, there were other parents there, and there was one that we ran into that obviously, was kind of in our spot, right? Like, they're close enough to go to the wedding, but they're not like, tier one, whatever, family or friends, just like us. And they hadn't planned ahead, and so their kid was just up the whole time. And so it worked out okay. Like, this kid wasn't screaming and kicking. It was a little bit older than Noah, which is kind of an interesting flip side of a parent trying to do it that way.
Yeah.
And the kid, the end result is the kid is awake and running around and needing to be entertained, and you can't enjoy it, and you're just kind of having to pay attention to them the whole time. And so, we chatted, and she was basically like, oh, my God, why didn't I think about bringing the pack and play? Like, next time, that's what I'm going to do. So if you've got the flexibility, just think about it, folks. Just, like, try it out. It's a unique situation, but, it pays off.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see this kind of catch on where if you're at a big event, like even if it's at a venue or something, that you designate a room as the nursery, bring a bunch of pack and plays, put all the babies in there, get them asleep, and then go out and party.
Baby room, boom.
That's awesome. And I also want to second bringing the monitor. I love that you did that. We brought ours on our trip too, and we were able to use that. Like, we would put the baby to bed in our cabin on the cruise ship, and then hand the monitor off to Grandpa, who is in the next room, and then we can go out to dinner and he can just monitor, so he's not having to sit in the room with the kid. He can do his thing, but someone's close enough. Like, sometimes we may not think about that with the monitors. Like, they're portable. You know what I mean? They're not just for use in the home. I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're in any kind of place where you can just go a little bit away but still be like on the property or the premises or in the building or whatever.
As far as the wireless signal will allow you to go.
Yeah, so like if you go to a hotel that has a bar, you can go down to the bar. Or like if you're at a resort, you can kind of go a little bit away. Yeah, not far. So it is kind of funny. What would happen is he'd be in the room at the wedding at the house, and we'd be outside. Under the tent, hanging out at the reception, and we'd probably be like not even, 50 yards away.
Yeah.
And it was kind of reaching the upper bounds of the limits. We had some connectivity issues. And so what would happen is I would just periodically hold up the monitor in the air. Like if you remember several years ago with cell phones, you'd be like, "Oh, where's my signal? Like, can you
hear
get
me
the
now?"
signal?"
Yeah.
And so you're holding up your phone and you're trying to reach the airwaves, the Wi-Fi signals or whatever, up in the air for some reason seemed to work.
Yeah.
And like this isn't a thing I think that's like a myth that we're just falling for. Like it would work.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you would get that signal if you just kind of hold your phone up.
Yeah.
Same thing work with the monitor.
Huh.
So you would just see me, I'd be the guy where like every 5 to 10 minutes, all of a sudden just be holding something up in the air and it would work. Like if it was sitting on the table, 50 yards away, the connection wasn't working. But if I just held it up, I could see. So I know this is going to sound dicey, but this is the last tip. If you have this situation and you're getting a little bit far out of range, don't be afraid to have it not work the entire time, as long as you can find like a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And just every 5 to 10 minutes, check it out, right?
That's hilarious.
Because the kid's sleeping. You don't need to literally be looking at them every minute. It's nice. It's comforting. So we were just able to kind of basically check it every few minutes just to confirm that he was asleep, and there's your peace of mind, and then you don't have to worry about it.
That's so cool. That's one of those things. It's like blowing in a Nintendo cartridge. There's no scientific reason that it should work.
But it always works.
But it just works.
They tell you it doesn't work, but why did it always work? That's all I'm saying.
So now let's talk about having kids, babies, toddlers around that age, and going to a formal event. Like you guys went to a wedding.
Yep.
I was thinking about this because last month my family went to a funeral. My wife's grandfather passed away. And we took a long drive down to his hometown and went to a funeral. It was in a church. It was maybe not humongous, so there's not hundreds of people that my kid is having to interact with, but there's family there and everyone wants to get in and say hi to him. But there's also those solemn, quiet moments where you really should not have a kid making noise.
No.
So, I thought this would be good to talk about because it's just tough. You know what I mean? It's tough because you've got kids who don't understand what's going on. Why do they have to be quiet? Why can't they go outside and run around and play? To control them, but also to kind of keep them occupied. Like, one thing that I had to do because our funeral service was kind of in the middle of the day was when it was around time for my son to take a nap. Yeah. I had to kind of find a quiet spot, and we didn't, like you guys had the pack and play. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I had to basically hold him for a while and kind of quietly sing him some lullabies until he sort of fell asleep for maybe 5 minutes. But the thing is, I couldn't just let him stay awake because at that point he was getting cranky and wanting to pull on things, which you don't want to do at a funeral. So, I found a quiet room. If you're in a church, if you're at a wedding or a funeral, there are going to be lots of storage rooms and maybe little Sunday school classes and things like that. Little rooms that are not going to be in use on that day. Slip into one of those. You're not going to get in trouble for it, and it's, that's especially good because a lot of these churches have nurseries, so you go in there. If your kid's toddler age, they're gonna have toys too. Sure, little playhouses and things like that to play with.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that didn't work for our situation because we weren't in that part of the church. But that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Find a place that's maybe stimulating, but maybe quiet and away from the crowds of people to get a little quiet time with your kid every once in a while. The craziest thing that happened was I was a pallbearer for this funeral, so I was in the front row, so I did not sit next to my son. He was with his mom over on the other side, but she was also in a separate row from her father because he was also a pallbearer, right? So it was basically just her and David, and then of course, halfway through the funeral service, the pastor's up on stage talking. David gets antsy. He wants to hop down. So, Ashley, she sets him down just so he can stand up, right? Right. But then he decides, okay, standing up's great, but I want to walk too.
Yeah, I'm gonna take off.
Yeah, so he takes off and he walks up to the front row where Pop is.
Of course.
And he starts babbling a little bit, and then luckily, he saw someone he knew and loved, and he just hopped up next to Pop.
There you go.
And sat down and kind of quieted back down again.
Hop on Pop. Dr. Seuss has got it for you.
That's one of his favorite books, actually.
Nice.
But that's I recommended on a previous episode, like if you're going to take a trip with kids, take lots of family so there's always someone to stimulate the kid and keep an eye on him.
Yep.
That's especially true for funerals and weddings. Like have a team there if you can, so that if the kid gets away from you, he's got someone else to run to, and that person can kind of physically
kind of be exciting. He's like, Mom, you're old news. And
exactly.
like, hey, Pops is over there. Boom.
Exactly. Physically restrain them also and kind of keep them quiet. So overall, that went well. It could have gone very badly. Like he could have started crying in the middle of the funeral. But like I said on the cruise ship episode, David's actually, he doesn't throw a lot of tantrums in public. He will get a little fussy if he gets bored or if there's something he wants to do but can't do. But he doesn't start screaming and flailing around and throwing things.
That's good.
Luckily.
Yeah. Knock on wood. Yep.
Knock on wood, exactly. that doesn't start happening anytime soon. But I am curious to hear how Noah did at this wedding.
Yeah, no doubt. Pretty good, if no other reason than the fact that he got to sleep, right? So he did eventually get to go to bed and kind of miss out on most of the activity, which means that he was quiet because he was asleep. Yeah. Which is fantastic. So if you can pull that off, great. But the wedding was interesting. So it was a lake. It was on a lake, and so there was some seating, but not enough for everyone, which actually worked out fabulously. Really? So if you can pull that off somehow, tell them just like, hey, make sure there's only seating for so many people, so that you don't have to sit, because then you don't have to worry about them kind of being a ball of energy that just builds up until the pressure blasts off, right? Like you're sitting in the pew, like that's what you're supposed to do. Standing, walking, that's all bad. For us, we didn't have to sit down. Gotcha. So we basically picked out a spot off to the side. Yeah. And, about half folks were sitting, half were standing and just kind of watching, which is interesting. It's a little unusual, right? Like I'm throwing out a lot of unique situations here, but if you can pull this off, even if everyone is sitting, I feel like with an outdoor wedding, you can kind of get away with more. Yeah. You don't have to sit. Yeah. It's not as formal. You can kind of go off to the side and kind of pick your little zone, if you will, and just kind of find like a comfortable spot where the kid can just kind of sit or crawl or walk and just kind of be off to the side there. And that way, it may seem odd, but I just want to challenge you to not worry about it. Yeah. Because no one cares. Yeah. Like, it's a wedding. They're there for the people getting married. And the people getting married also don't care about you because they're pretty busy too. They're not going to see you. Right. So, like, remove yourself from the equation. Like, put yourself off to the side. Like, it might sound weird to go to a wedding and, like, not be, like, right up on it. Yeah. But we don't have options anymore. Like, we don't need to focus on that as your priority. As a parent, your priority is just like getting through the moment. Yeah. So we went off to the side and kind of found like a little spot in the shade, and just kind of hung out and just kind of Noah got to sit. When he wanted to, we kind of like did some little bit of walking around, just kind of burn off a little energy. Yeah. And I'm not talking like walking around like a giant area. Like, we kind of stayed contained in this little spot that we were in, but then I could give him his snacks, and it wasn't annoying anybody. Crackers, pick him up if I need to, and we just kind of chilled. And it was great. And so he didn't really complain the entire time. If he did start to babble, boom, passy right in the mouth. Yeah. Just to kind of knock that out. And it's kind of like you said on the cruise ship, like the passy becomes your best friend when you're traveling because it's an instant stopper if you need it. And so, we're still kind of doing the passy like at night and occasionally whenever he gets fussy. And so that was still kind of natural for us to kind of pop that in as needed. And so we actually worked out quite well at the wedding, just being able to kind of be off to the side. So it's kind of like you said, if you needed to, if you're in like a formal church setting and you're in that contained sanctuary, like you mentioned, get up and move out if you have to. And I can't even imagine like the idea you had about going to the nursery. That's amazing. That blew my mind. I never thought about it. So if you do happen to go to a church, I'm kind of thinking along your lines, like ask somebody. There's probably somebody from the church or that at least attends the church. Like as you're heading in, be like, hey, where's the nursery? Yeah. And they probably won't even bat an eyelash about like why you need to know it. They'll see the kid and they'll get it. Yep. And then you just kind of know where you can go off to if you have to. And I think that's a pretty great idea. And my wife is watching and just sent me a message, and she said that obviously you're trying to keep the kid quiet, right? Right. So if you've got the snacks, I mentioned the sandwiches and the crackers, be very slow and deliberate about it. Yeah. So piece at a time, just like really stretch it out. So it worked out very well, like just one piece of sandwich, one cracker, so that they have to interact with the piece, eat it, consume it.
Yeah.
And you wait until they're like next. And like Noah was so into this situation and he understood very quickly what we were doing to him. So literally after he would get the cracker and he would just chomp it down right away. He would just stick his hand out. So he was waiting for it. He knew what was going on, but he was like, "You will fulfill this. Like I see what you're doing, but I'm going to tell you that I need that next cracker," and it didn't stop. That's the one fault that you run into by doing it piecemeal is that they're just going to keep going piece at a time because they don't realize that they've eaten, a lot or like 100 crackers or whatever it is. So just have like a bottomless supply if you can and just piecemeal it out. Best thing we did.
Nice. So I think that'll do it for today's episode. Brandon, thanks for sharing all of that. I mean, I think between the two of us, we put out a lot of what could go wrong and a lot of what can go right. I think a lot of times travel is all about just containing the situation. Like there's going to be chaos. Do what you can to kind of compress it and restrict it to one particular area, like find another room, find a spot off to the side, because kids are going to be kids. You can't get them to stop being kids, but you can sort of remove them from the equation, like you said, so that, you're not in the middle of where you have to be quiet. So I think that was really cool. We'll close out today. Brandon, between this week and next week, if our listeners have questions for us, where can they find us?
You can join in on the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. Please give us a like or a follow there. We also have a new dad group on Facebook, Dadsplaining, a fatherhood group, so you can join in the chats and the conversations there. Please also send us an email if you would like to ever pitch us a topic or talk to us or send us a question at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com, and then you'll grab this episode and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
That's right. So next week, we might just have a cool little interview for you guys. I'm working on setting it up right now, but it's with a man named Jason Creedman, who is the founder of Dad University. It's a website and a YouTube channel full of helpful tips for dads, especially for new dads. It's something kind of along the lines of what we do. We're not experts, so we try and share what we know. So we're going to try and hook up with him, but if we can't make that happen, we'll just talk about something else. So thanks for listening to us. Before we close out today, I am going to drop a little promo at the end of this episode for you guys. So if you've been listening to our shows, in one or two episodes in the past, I have noted that here at WSB Radio in Atlanta, Georgia, where we record our podcast, there is another podcast called The Power Pod, and they have on multiple occasions taken our studio that we record in before we're able to record, so then we are forced to relocate and find some place else to do it, and it's been kind of a pain in the butt. But they're a cool bunch of people.
They just hate kids, but it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, none of them are dads. So if you're into the dad thing, stick with us. But, it's kind of a cool sort of current events podcast. They have fun with the news. They talk about different things. So give that a listen. And until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, did I tell you about how my wife got mad at me because I have no sense of direction?
Oh, every day, yeah.
Yeah, well, I got so mad I just packed up my stuff and instead of...
Hey, now I'm with you.
Here's the thing. You have to laugh at that because your wife dropped that in the comments.
Bingo.
So that's awesome. So big laugh.
That's right. Hey,
Thanks, Austin, for dropping that. We'll see you guys next time.
Like current events and want to be the smartest among your friends? Then the Power Pod is the show for you.
The Power Pod is a weekly recap show where we cover the current events of the week.
It's a show where we're not afraid to get serious.
And we're not afraid to have some fun.
So try us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, the WSB Radio app, WSBRadio.com, Stitcher, CastBox. Okay. Anywhere there are podcasts, we are there. So power up with the Power